You're listening to the Get Out and Drive podcast with John, custom car nerd Meyer, and Jason, old car guy Carr. We'll be bringing you gearheads everything you never wanted to know about cars and why they should be on the road and not in your garage. Are you ready to get out and drive?
Fred, before we go any further, we know where this is going, but before our listeners find out where this is going, let's just do a quick recap. There's a record to be broken, and Fred Ashmore is setting his mind to do this. You're talking to a lot of the right people, so you think. You're in with the right people, so you think. You get to the point where I'm planning this right down to the car that you're going to do the run in. You get a little bit of news from a buddy that says you're in trouble to some degree by something somebody said. And now you've got to scrap everything to that point. And I can just imagine how pissed off you would have been. Like you said, like now all of a sudden you've got a point to prove and you've got a job to do. But now you've got no car because you've had to cancel that sale. You don't want anyone to know what you're driving. Where do we go from here? What's the next step to planning this run? Where do you find a car?
Really, COVID was the best thing that happened to my run in so many ways. And people go, oh, it's the traffic. Oh, it's this. It wasn't the traffic. Because I'll tell you right now, the thing that people forget about, number one, is they lifted the mandate on truckers. So you could drive 40 hours a week straight with no CDL. They were not pulling people over. The roads were jacked with trucks. And the worst thing on a run is trucks. So COVID was the best thing that happened because it gave time for me to calm down. It gave me time to be to myself like a lot of people know I can be. And it gave me time to deduce what the next step was. The first thing I needed to do was call my brother. And my brother he's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. He's down to earth. He's me without being high strung. He's quiet. He's articulate. He's good looking. He's smart. He's a very intelligent person.
Did you hear how Fred just complimented himself by complimenting his brother?
I don't know how to compliment myself, but he's everything I'm not. He's a very, very highly intelligent person. He had a triple major of math, science, and physics, and he attended Ithaca and Cornell at the same time. The military took him in to put him on nuclear submarines. He's that guy. So I needed him to talk me off the ledge. That's really what it was. I didn't know what to do. I was really just, sometimes, like I've told a lot of people, and you guys may see it on my things, I say, sometimes you just need to go back to bed. Well, when COVID hit, pretty much going to bed was all you could do. So I had a little camper here at my property, started cleaning up, and started just scheming what I do next. And part of that was, what do I get for a car? And the first thing my brother said is he said, JR, unfortunately, you just can't use any of these Cannonball guys. You just can't use them. He said, we're going to have to do this, as you guys said, grassroots, general people people you can trust, and people who aren't going to stab you in the back, which is a handful of people, because we're in COVID. You don't have a lot of opportunities where you can, travel. You can have people here or people there and do all kinds of things. So we're in a different zone now, where before you had people all over the USA. I can call 20 people and, I'll meet you in California, or this person. But now I can't call any of them, because if this one tells that one, who might tell this one, who tells that one, cat's out of the bag. So he got me to resort back to the people that I knew, the people that I could trust, but I had to find a car. So I started researching options for rental cars, because one of the things that really PO'd me was the game that was played with a rental car during my 2019 run. And we can talk about that at another time. So the goal was, I'm going to break the rental record I'm going to break the entire record and I'm going to break the solo record. So I'm going for the hat trick. I'm not messing around. I am going for the hat trick. I want to break them all. And that was what the next step was. So Arthur, my brother, started mapping out traffic in and out of New York. The thing we were finding was early in the morning during daylight, nobody was going out of the city. Everybody was coming into the city because the people were in the city, were already working in the city, so they weren't going out of the city, if that makes sense. And the other people that had been in the city that would go out had moved away or gone to Maine or wherever. So there was very low traffic or in the early morning hours. So our goal was we were going to plan to leave in the morning. That was the ultimate plan, is we were going to leave in the morning. We set at a ridiculous pace as far as what we wanted to do and what we wanted to break. Like I said, it was the initial goal was 25 hours, but I knew sub 26 was possible because the guys who did the Audi that were really kind of unprepared, not taking anything away from them, they're all three of them are great guys. I feel really bad for what happened to them and how they were treated when they set that first record. It was really uncalled for, and I really never got on that bandwagon, and that was part of maybe what set me apart is people didn't like the fact that I wouldn't get on the bandwagon and chastise these guys for whatever reason. It just wasn't going to happen. These were guys, they had a white Audi, and it was his dad's lease car, and his parents were away, and they took it and they put a great big fuel tank in the back of it, concocted up a fuel transfer in it, and just said, heck it, we're going to go do it. And I think they ran 26:38, and which was a great time. I mean, it beat the other time by almost an hour. The thing is their car would only go 130. It was limited, speed limited to 130. And I said, man, if these guys were limited to 130 with little to no experience, what could I actually do in a car? What could I actually put down for a number? So I started looking for a better car. I'm going by myself. And well, this is one of the interesting things a lot of people didn't know is my brother and I had thought about doing it together. But when COVID hit, that scratched it. He was my voice in the ear the whole way. You need to get to this town by this time. You're behind by this amount. You picked up this amount. Why is your speed dropped off on Glimpse? What's going on? It just kind of stayed in my ear. As that took place, I started looking for a car that a solo person could ride in that was fast enough, and started doing the calculations. Okay, I'm doing a solo run. What if I eliminate the people and replace them with fuel? And a lot of people are like, oh my word, there's so much weight and so much this. And when you actually sit down and figure it out, replacing a 150 to 170 pound body with fuel that burns off as you go, it's kind of ingenious. It's like you're taking a person and grabbing them by the seat of the pants and throwing them out the window every 2 or 3 hours. There was only a couple of companies that had Mustangs, and one of them was Hertz. So I made the reservation for Hertz, and we picked a day that we were planning on doing it. From there, I got the car, but not the car I wanted. So when I drove in, my buddy took me up to the Hertz rental, and we drove by this silver Mustang sitting on the right side. And they said, oh, geez, I wonder if that's my car. I was like, oh, no, that's Avis. So we drove down to Hertz, and I walked up to the counter, and I said to the guy, I was like, hey, I'm here to pick up the Mustang. And he says, Mustang? I said, yes. I said, I have a reservation. And he looks and he goes, oh, yeah, we gave out the last Mustang yesterday. I said, what? I said, I reserved a Mustang. Oh, well, we'll upgrade you to a Cadillac. I said, I don't want a Cadillac. I want a Mustang. Well, I said, no, this is like a bad Seinfeld episode. You know how to take the reservation. You just don't know how to keep the reservation. And that's what I said to him. He's like, well, I don't know what to do. This is what I said to him. I said, my daughter don't want to ride across the country in no damn Cadillac. I said, cancel my reservation. And I headed over to Avis. And I was like, I saw it was a 5.0. And I said, is that car for rent? And just some young girl there who, during COVID, she didn't want to be there. She wanted to be somewhere else. I said, can I rent that car? And she says, yeah. And I think I was gone in like It was it wasn't the 15, 20 minutes at the absolute most. It might even been 10. I signed everything and away I went. And then I headed over to my buddy's shop and pulled in and started talking to him and measuring for tanks. And I wasn't there. The car was parked out front. And I was talking to him and I heard this noise outside. And I'm like, what in the world is that? I walked outside and there was goats all over that Mustang, standing on the Mustang. Rental car, just rented it. And there's goats all over the roof of this Mustang. And you want to scream and holler at them, but you can't. You can't holler because they're gonna, get all, freak out and scratch it all up.
Jason, we sure get to talk a lot.
Yes, and some of us more than others.
Who, me?
I'm not pointing any fingers.
Yes, you are. But we want to hear from our listeners. Just go to our website, getoutanddrive.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click the listener hotline button. We want to hear from you. Cool stories, breakdown stories,
Questions, comments,
hate mail,
even hate mail?
even hate mail. You got a car show in your area? Let us know.
Tell us an interesting story.
Let us know what you like to get out and drive. The Get Out and Drive podcast has partnered with RacingJunk.com to offer a Pro Club membership exclusively for our listeners for just $25 a year.
Just a few perks of the Pro Club membership include up to 50 free photos per ad, a dashboard to keep track of your listed items, and search alerts so you don't miss out on that must-have part.
Don't forget about the Racing Junk store discount. Free video uploads for your ads, $65 in ad upgrade credits, and an official club member banner on your ads.
Just use promo code POD23 when you sign up on RacingJunk.com.
So we managed to get the goats off it. I brought in and started tearing the thing apart, started sourcing tanks. And before you knew it, I found a bunch of tanks on Marketplace. I got everything plumbed up and started just doing some, transfers to see if everything would work right. And now we got a car. Now we're all set. We just have to choose what day we were going to do it.
Did you buy that car?
Well, there's more to the story. You're too far ahead.
I'm sorry. All right.
So no, at the time I did not buy the car. It was a full-blown rental car. And it was under, I think I had it 2 weeks. I think I had it for 2 weeks, and I extended the rental because we were going to do the Bandit run. And my dad was coming down. He planned on we were going to do the Bandit run. I've got my brother all set. We've got our routes all picked out and everything. And now it's time to put up or shut up. Got in the car, got all my laser jammers and stuff set up on it, and headed to New York. I was cruising and got there. And probably if there was a mistake I made on the way there, was thinking I could get fuel in New York City. And that was probably one of my worries I had, is that it didn't quite have enough to get halfway. So we decided we were going to leave at 6 a.m., which was right around sunrise. And it was a good round number. It's easier on the person who's calculating your time when you leave at a round number. So I got out of New York.
Tell our listeners, how do you make this official? How do you say, I'm starting at this time, and it becomes official to be a record?
That was the hard part, is everybody always said, and this was always the staple, there's a certain amount of trust that you have in people. I have no reason to sit here and argue with them, debate with them, or anything else. Now it's a completely different story. So when I was doing it, we were told you have certain things, you have phone records, you have, one of the things I used was glimpse screenshots. You can't make up where you are when you're on glimpse. So I would do glimpse screenshots, which would tell you how fast you were going. And it would also tell you, where you were in the country, and it has your name on it. So those were some of the ways that to where I was at what time I was there. So there was a lot of things that I did to document my run. I FaceTimed at my start. I FaceTimed at my finish. So I did that to cover myself there, because we're talking about COVID. We're talking about, you're not even supposed to be in downtown New York. You couldn't go anywhere. So you pretty much had to drive where you were. There was no just randomly wandering around, renting cars all over the country or flying around. So yeah, I took probably 15, 20 photos close to the departure time. And then I took photos at the departure time with all of my timing devices and everything. I got ready to get out of town. And so I'm always at benchmarks, Wheeling, West Virginia, Indianapolis, Terre Haute, just different areas along the way that you use as benchmarks. And that's where I did my screenshots and stuff. I'd screenshot where I was, how fast I was going. Anytime I could be full throttle, wide open, I was. And I'm not going to say I didn't get behind some orange cones at some point or use a breakdown lane where maybe I shouldn't have, but I had a mission and I was going to accomplish it or I was going to go to jail. That's just the way I looked at it. It was so cool to just sit there and just the car shook a little bit and it, the wind was whipping over the top of the car and you just kind of settle in. And being a race car driver, anybody that drives race cars or stuff, they just kind of settle in, get comfortable, and go to work. Whether you're lapping cars, whether you're doing jumps in the Baja, you just settle into where you're comfortable and do what you need to do. And that's really where I was. I was settled in and I was going just as fast as I possibly could to get where I needed to go. And we got into Tulsa, which was my halfway point. We were moving. We were completely flying. And then when we pulled down into Tulsa, I started getting a hold of my guys. I got a hold of Grant and Brady, and they were all set. They had pumps all set up. You have these big bulk tanks in the back of your trucks. I asked him to upgrade his pump because he's on Tulsa time. Grant is the nicest guy you ever meet. And he's just a Tulsa boy, and he's a real cowboy. So I asked Grant if we could get a 20-gallon per minute pump. Nah, Fred, you're not going to pay me for it. And I'm like, whatever, Grant. And I come off the interstate, and I felt like I was at Daytona 500. I felt like Harry Hogg and Tom Cruise, Days of Thunder. I'm paddle shifting. Blah, blah, blah. I pull down in there, and I'm taking the caps off the tanks in the car. And as I'm pulling up, I'm putting in part, popping the trunk. And by the time I get out, so I showed up. He was good. He was loaded. He had fuel, and they've already unscrewed the back. They've reached in the passenger side door, and I've filled those tanks, and the other guys got the caps off the back. So crazy fuel stop. 126 gallons in 8 minutes in that car. Then the sun started coming down, and when the sun comes down, things start changing a little bit. You've been up for a while. Things that aren't moving seem like they're moving. Everything, starts to be a blur at that speed. I was running my light. Started running into the night and stuff. And the trucks were probably the biggest thing that nobody talks about. Everybody automatically thinks there was nobody on the road. This is a drag strip. There's nobody else on it but you. And it just wasn't the way it was. There was less car traffic, yes, but by no means, in any way, shape, or form, was there no traffic on the road. If anything, it was more congested with trucks, which tend to be the most dangerous things to cannonballers. They can be your biggest friends. They can be your biggest enemies. Piss off a trucker, you piss off all the truckers. Because one radios the other, radios the other, radios the other. And you have to maintain a certain amount of road prowess around them because they can end your run really quick. I've had friends that they've put off the road. I've had friends that they've just parked next to each other and don't let you by. It happened to me in 19. So as we were blazing along and everything was going pretty good, there was no animal issues. I didn't have any animals run out in front of me, which is why I chose to leave at sunup. Because as a solo driver, you are your eyes, you are your ears, you are everything. You're your own spotter. And not having any help, you require as much daylight as possible. And the best thing to do is to put the sunshine at your back and have it chase you across the country. And eventually it passes you. But the least amount of driving at night for a solo driver is, to me, is the best opportunity. So you needed to use every single thing I could to an advantage. Fuel stops was an advantage. I had one. Some of the other guys that did it had 5 or 6 fuel stops or unplanned stops, and I didn't. We figure I got out of there in 8 minutes for my one stop, and you have 5 or 6 stops, and it takes you, let's just say, 5 minutes to stop. That's 30 minutes right there. 30 minutes minus 8. That's 22 minutes I gained on. A lot of people don't take that into consideration, where I took advantage of every opportunity I could. Gas instead of people. So those 3 people in the car are going to ride with you whether you fuel up or not. So your car is at the realm of poor fuel mileage the entire time, whereas I'm burning off fuel, I'm picking up miles per gallon. I'm losing weight.
So I think it's important to note here right now that, in this particular case, for the most part, everything worked out in your favor. You took chances. You had the one fuel stop. You didn't get pulled over by cops. You didn't hit any animals. You didn't have an accident. You didn't get any run with any truckers. Like, all of this worked in your favor to do this record and this trifecta. It very quickly could have gone the other way. And that's what a lot of people kept, I think they kept at questioning why did it work out for him? Because so many people have done it and have had the cops and the gas and the animals and the truckers become an issue. So I think it's important to note that, yeah, all those risks and all those problems were there.
Yeah.
You just happen to avoid them.
Yeah. And the biggest thing, like you said, is people ask why, but they also don't realize how many times I've done this. And everything has an unknown factor of the pump could have broke and not worked and fueled the car. And it might have been a 30-minute fuel stop by the time I got the fuel in the car. Or I might have had to stop at a fuel station because they got stuck in traffic and didn't show up on time. So there's so many things, like you said, that could have happened that didn't. But anybody who has ever gotten in the car with me, whether it's to go across the country, whether it's to go across town, they know that I'm going to eliminate every single thing that can go wrong in a vehicle. A lot of my Cannonball cars, they don't have heaters. That's why I eliminated as many things as possible, and that's why my runs have been successful, is because I take out the element of the unknown. If the heater isn't there, the heater can't break. If the AC belt isn't on the compressor and the compressor isn't on the car, I'm not lugging around weight I don't need. And I don't have to worry about the compressor clutch blowing up at 140 and putting myself on the side of the road because they all run off the same belt. There's so many aspects that people don't look at when it comes to the entirety of the run, whether it was the fact that we unorthodox left out in New York at 6 a.m. That I don't know as to anybody else has done it since me, but to the point that I did it, everybody's like, oh, you got to leave at midnight. Got to leave at midnight. Got to leave at midnight. And when I talked to others afterwards, they said, well, we considered leaving at that time, but they didn't. And the traffic patterns and watching is one of the biggest things that helped us by watching the different cities at different times, what was congested and what wasn't. And really, for the most part, all the way across the USA, we took that element of surprise out of it. Now, there's some guys that ran really close to my time as a team that got stuck in a hostage situation. I mean, you want to talk about the unknown. These guys are stuck in a hostage situation. They have to go like 100 miles out of the way, and they wind up missing my time by, 20 minutes. So if you take all that stuff and you put it in to what happens to people or what can happen to people, it's about the person that takes the most time to eliminate as many unknowns as possible. And that was really what made my run special up until the point I got to California. And that was my unknown of what was going to take place when I got to the ag center. And it was, when I got there, you pull up and it's an unknown. I've gone through there probably a dozen times in my life. And many times there's nobody there. They pull you up, you got any blah, 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 and you go through. Well, COVID was a little different. COVID was still fresh, was still new. There were still mandates. There were still lockdowns. And I got there and there was a person with their car all tore apart. And I'm sitting there, sweating razor blades going, I got to keep this cool. If I'm sitting here sweating like a dog looking at these people who want to know why I'm coming to California, I don't know what their rules are. I don't know what their laws are. I'm just a guy in a car trying to do something stupid. And then I had to, assess the situation as I sat there as to what I was going to tell them when I got to the front of the line, because as you're sitting there, as you're sleep deprived, as you're tired, everything's going through your head. Like I said, I think of a million things a minute. And so what are they looking for? What are they looking for? Am I not even going to be allowed here because, I'm not a resident, or I don't have a letter from somebody saying why I'm coming to California? Are they going to question why my passenger seat's covered up with a bath towel or a blanket? Or, what's going on with this random guy showing up by himself going to I don't know. I don't make the rules. I'm just the guy at the checkpoint. So I just said to myself, I've got a car, Texas plates on it. Best thing to do is say I'm an essential worker. I took a job in California. And as I sat there, the time it's so hard. You guys have no idea. You're just sitting there and I don't listen to the radio. I'm a numbers guy. I watch the numbers. I watch the timer. I watch the gas gauge. I watch the everything just going against me. And you're sitting there. And this was my unknown. I didn't know if I was going to go to jail. I didn't know if I was going to be told, you got to take this exit and go back to where you came from. So I just sat there. And fortunately for me, it worked in my favor in the sense that I could keep going on my run. However, I wasn't going to be able to maintain the time I wanted to, which was at this point, we were really kind of around the 25, 30 area is what we thought we could do. And then I got into California and an officer chased me. And so you go about your business. People say, well, did you get pulled over? I was like, no, I didn't stop. And I was going to go jail either way. I mean, I figure I might as well roll the dice. I mean, if nothing else, make a good YouTube video on a dash cam. So I just, as soon as I saw him, I started thinking, million miles a second, what do I do? And I saw an exit coming up, got off the exit. Well, he could see I got off. I intentionally put my blinker on. He could see I got off my exit because there's a big red light flashing however far I was ahead of him. And I just used the series of exits, and we're going to clear something up right now because apparently some people don't understand how this works. I call it the equivalent of clover leafing, okay? Now, there's been some people really upset that I use the word clover leaf. Now, anybody who has a GPS, is half intelligent, understands, and I'll ask you guys, here's my 60 seconds for you. When you get off your route on your GPS, what does it do?
Recalculate.
Tells you to recalculate.
Really? Wow, think of that. So I got off my route and it recalculated me. And I intentionally went the wrong way so that it wouldn't put me directly back on the interstate where the cop was, so that it would recalculate me back in the direction I needed to go with a way to get away from the officer. So when I say I quote clover leaf, it doesn't mean I made ring around the rosies and drove in circles 4 times. It means I used a series of exits to recalculate myself to drive in the same direction. You can thank our GPSs for it. You don't have to go to school for this. All you have to do is put destination and turn the wrong way, and it'll recalculate you. So it wasn't rocket science. It's really simple. I got off the interstate. I intentionally took a wrong turn, and the GPS corrected me to put me back behind the officer wherever he went. And then I went about my business. So I didn't get pulled over. He went the wrong way. And now I'm a stressed out mess going into Redondo because I don't know if people have called, meaning not cannonballers, meaning police officers. So this guy could have called ahead. He could have said vehicle high rate of speed. They have been known that some of the cannonball stuff had come out. This is one of the million things going through my head. Could somebody be at the Portofino? We don't know. I have no idea. So I pull in there and there's no brass band. There's no big finish line. There's no stripe to drive through or anything. It's just me, foggy morning, and my car. So I get out and take some pictures, do what I need to do, make my FaceTime phone call. So I have my phone records. And that was that. About that time, a caretaker come out on a golf cart. And I said, well, if I'm not supposed to be here, he's probably gonna call and tell me that I'm not supposed to be here. So I just pulled over by the crab shack. The picture said 2555. And that's the story of 2555. And from there, we turned around and we headed it back to Tulsa. I came back to town. I picked up my truck, went and grabbed my dad, and my dad had no idea I did the run. We kept it on the down low because if I didn't do it, then there's no sense to make a big fanfare of it. And my dad is borderline shocked / surprised / maybe crying, not necessarily knowing how to react to it. And at that point, it was kind of like, okay, now we have to be very careful how we handle this thing.
That is a long answer to a very simple question, and I love it. I absolutely love it because that's what I end up doing.
Can you imagine if something actually happened of significance, or I hit a dog, or I got pulled over, or there's for as long as that answer was, it could have been a lot longer with incidents along the way. But I definitely thought when we took the time to talk about it, would clear up some of the things that people have made mountains out of molehills that really is basically a bunch of foolishness.
Now, I want to go back to something I asked you at the beginning of this interview, and that was, what are the rules of Cannonball? Now, the short answer to that was there are no rules. Okay, Brock Yates said it himself when we started the Cannonball back in whatever year it was. And here you are, you've gone with no rules. You've made the run in 25:55. And when the time came that you could actually announce that you did the 25:55, all of a sudden people are trying to poke holes in your story.
Yep.
Because they don't think that you did it on a solo run. They don't think you did it in a rental car, and they claim that you had an unfair advantage doing it during COVID. Everything that they were trying to poke at you comes down to the one rule that Brock Yates set at the beginning of the Cannonball Run.
Yep.
How are they trying to deny you this win? How are they how are they trying to pull this away from you?
So again, there's no rules. You can release the information whenever you want.
We know you enjoy the Get Out and Drive podcast. John, let our listeners know how they can support the show.
Well, you can buy the show a gallon of gas.
Please explain.
You've heard of Buy Me a Coffee, right?
Oh, yeah.
But who needs coffee? We need a gallon of gas. Just go to our website, getoutanddrive.com, scroll to the bottom of any screen, and you'll see the Buy Us a Gallon of Gas link. Just click, and you'll help to keep our show running.
Cruise on over to our website, getoutanddrive.com, for all the info you never wanted to know about our podcast. Hit us up on our listener hotline, be the first to know what's happening, get industry news, and grab your Get Out and Drive merch. Connect with us on social media. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow us on Twitter at Get Out and Drive Pod.
What drives you?